Hello.
Hi.
This is Mandy.
And this is Marley. This is episode 3 of Hitbox.
We're going to be covering horror games in this episode.
Yes, we are.
So...
I'm going to bring up the little file where we have all of our notes.
Oh, yeah. So, some questions that we kind of want to answer by the end of this is what makes a good horror game? And what makes a game scary? And horror versus dystopic. And, like, what that means, I guess.
Mm-hmm.
So I think that the first one I want to talk about is Alien Isolation. You haven't played this one.
Yeah, I don't even know anything about this one, actually.
Sick. So Alien Isolation is, like, kind of a great game in the sense that it's very much like the movie, at least in my opinion. And we were talking about this a little bit earlier, but what makes a good horror movie is kind of not like blatant jump scares, but rather like the ever-looming threat that something could happen.
Mm-hmm.
And Alien Isolation, like, kind of manifests itself in the exact same way that Alien does, which there aren't any... I mean, there's cutscenes where there's jump scares, but it's a cutscene, so you kind of assume that it's going to happen, right? But when you're walking around, the alien could be anywhere. And that's just kind of the game.
I don't care for that. Yeah.
No, it's terrifying, which probably makes it one of the scariest games, right? Because there's nothing, like, waiting for you. It's just always around. And which makes the game super unique because everyone will end up playing it differently and getting different scares at different points.
I can really see now. I haven't played Prey either, but I can see now.
I don't know what Prey is.
Yeah, it's this really interesting game by Obsidian, I want to say, or maybe Bethesda. Okay, anyway. And you kind of uses that mechanic. It's on a spaceship, and anything could be an enemy. Again, I haven't played it, but that's what... I feel like it probably took a lot of influence from this game.
Yeah, totally. But yeah, I don't know. I think that that's like a good one to start with, just because I think it's a really great game. I haven't played all the way through it, but I've definitely like seen a playthrough of it a while ago, and then also played a bit of it myself. And it's terrifying. I remember playing it with our friend Kyle, and he gets very easily scared, which you wouldn't expect. But I obviously
Shout
do
out
too.
to our friend Kyle.
I know. And I obviously get really scared too. And we were just hunched up on the couch. Like, we could not move an inch.
Oh, no.
Like, we couldn't move the whole time. Like, not because we were expecting there to be, like, a jump scare necessarily, but, like, we just, like, knew it was around. And I think that that's what makes that game, like, so terrifying, is that, like, at any point in where you are, like, it could just, like, get you.
I feel like that's also faithful to its source material.
Exactly.
Because I spent the entirety of Alien, as you know, with pretty much my eyes closed.
Yeah. No, definitely. But I mean, I don't know. I think that it's a good example of like what I think a horror game, like what makes a horror game really successful.
I also think that's really immersive. For
Yeah,
a game
it's so
to
immersive.
Because instead of like you calculating and knowing based on like musical cues, like when an enemy's coming, or even like in a game like Until Dawn, like the formulaic kind of like unpurposeful but formulaic,
right?
Or Slenderman, which we'll talk about later, where you know how the monster's going to get you and how it's going to get you.
Yeah.
I've never played Alien Isolation before, but from what it sounds like, it's really good at not giving anything away so that you're genuinely shocked when something does happen.
Yeah, no, totally. And of course, I imagine that after a certain time, if you do get, like, caught by the alien, you kind of get used to it. But I feel like because of the fact that it could get you anywhere, you wouldn't get as used to it as something like, oh, well, only in these specific zones can I get captured or something like that. I can't think of a good example. But, you know, or maybe only when I bring out this item, like, then the enemy has, like, a chance to get me, you know? Whereas, like, you could be doing anything and it could get you.
Yeah.
Which is, like, really, it's terrifying.
Definitely.
The next one that I wanted to talk about was Amnesia: Dark Descent, because you definitely can't make a horror game podcast without talking about this game.
Yeah, I also haven't played this game, so I'm kind of...
Yeah. This game's interesting to me because I, like, when I was younger and I first started watching YouTube Let's Plays, this was the first playthrough I ever watched. Was a playthrough of Amnesia: Dark Descent.
Wow, you really jumped in there, huh?
Yeah, I know. It's crazy. Well, I mean, I think this is a little tangent, but I think back then, like, Let's Players really only played horror games.
Yeah, I think the Five Nights at Freddy kind of boom really gave birth to a lot of...
That's true.
To a lot of Let's Players.
Yeah, no, totally.
Or at least Let's Players that were popular outside of, like, niche YouTube gaming circles.
Which is actually super interesting, because if we're talking about horror, like... Horror is scary, obviously. You play a game because you want to get scared, in a sense, if you're playing a horror game. And you watch a horror movie because you want to be scared. So that's an interesting thing about Let's Plays, is, like, the kind of the draw for watching a Let's Player is watching them get scared, which is also very interesting. I don't know. But Amnesia Dark Descent is also a pretty good game. It's like a puzzle game, basically. And there's this really ugly guy who looks like a potato sack who follows you around. Like, retrospectively, he's not scary at all.
I mean, but Oogie Boogie was scary. And
That's true.
Still scary.
He looks literally like Oogie Boogie, but with a ripped face. Like,
that's worse. I would argue, actually, that is scary. And I've never played this game, but now I kind of want to Google to see what this man looks like.
Don't. You'll have nightmares. But he's very scary. But I think another part of what makes Amnesia very successful is, in the same vein as Alien Isolation, he can almost get you anywhere. Like, the game is not as seamless as Alien Isolation, in the sense that this monster cannot actually get you any single place you are in the game, because you're kind of going through a labyrinth, and the monster is triggered to only be in certain places at certain times. However, the game makes you feel as though he could get you at any time.
When was this game made, just out of curiosity?
I can look it up, but it was probably, like, 2012?
Oh, okay. Yeah, I don't know. I'm always interested in how horror games, I think, also really reflect the year they were made in, because there's trends. Like,
totally.
I mean, we just mentioned Five Nights at Freddy's, but horror games definitely go through trends. 2010. Okay, so it's kind of old.
Yeah. At this point, yeah.
It's kind
of scary to think 2010 is old.
Almost 9 years old.
Well, in terms of games, like, last year is old.
Yeah.
So, yeah, that one's pretty old. And honestly, because the game is so, like, dark, like physically it's dark, the graphics kind of hold up, which is kind of hilarious.
Yeah, it's fantastic.
But Machine for Pigs is bad.
Can you please elaborate on what Machine for Pigs is?
Yeah, so Amnesia Dark Descent came out in 2010, and I think that Machine for Pigs came out way later. I think it came out in, like, 2016, or something like that. And it's, like, basically the sequel. So, also, another interesting thing about Amnesia Dark Descent is that it has lots of, like, mods. So people will build different stories in the world, kind of like Gary's mod. And like Portal mods and stuff like that. Like, you can make puzzles and stuff.
Like Dear Esther is a game built entirely as a mod of another game.
Oh, that's wild. I didn't know that.
Source Engine, baby.
Yeah. But Amnesia Dark Descent, Machine for Pigs was made after that. And I guess the sequel, I can't remember if it's supposed to be a sequel or a prequel.
It's got a sick name.
But it's not, like... So, in Dark Descent, right, there's a scary guy who, like, follows you, and, like, the last thing you see before he dies is, like, his face, and he's like, bah, you know? But Machine for Pigs, there's no monster, as I recall. There's just, like rampant oinking.
Rampant oinking, okay.
Like, as you, like, die, there's, like, wah, wah, you know, like...
So it's implying, so what's that implying? Yeah, what's the plot of this? I'm curious.
I don't remember the plot at all, but, like...
I mean, this ties into, we also had a conversation earlier this week about sound design in horror movies specifically, but also in games. Right. So I think that's important here.
Yeah, no, totally. It's just not effective, like, at all.
Yeah.
And the thing about Dark Descent that I've just remembered talking about it is that you're kind of this guy going through this, like house/labyrinth underground thing, but you're getting snippets of the past, basically. So you're reading journal entries, and you, like, I think you get, like, visions or something like that, of, like, what happened to you in the past, because it's called amnesia. So you're kind of, like, figuring out who you are, because you don't remember who you are. And I think the ending is basically, like, you figure out you're not a good person.
Oh, I love games that do that.
Yeah, me too.
Personally.
And Machine for Pigs is, like, the same. So basically, I think the plot, if this is wrong, this is going to be hilarious, but essentially the plot is, like, you find out that, like, someone built this machine, but, like, pigs, like, pig men, like, built it.
All right.
And so, like, oh, wait, no, there probably is a monster, and it's just, like, a pig man, but it's not scary. Like, that's still the oinking thing is true. Like, it's bad.
There's potential, maybe.
Yeah. But, like, I remember when
Animal Farm.
Yeah. Right? No, seriously, though. People are like, ooh. No, I mean, when it came out, people didn't hate it, actually, and I think that's probably because of the time period it came out in. Like, people hate sequels now, but...
Yeah, I mean, I'm kind of one of those people.
I understand to a certain extent,
yeah.
but also, like, people who, like, go on it online about, like, ruins the original.
No, I'm not that person.
No, it doesn't. But people weren't, if I recall, people weren't angry about Machine for Pigs. People just didn't like it. Like, people were just like, this is not Amnesia, obviously. Yeah. And it's like, it's kind of I don't know, it's like weird for the series to be like, this is the sequel when it's so pales in comparison to the first one. Because the first one's really good.
Yeah, there's definitely a lot of game series where the first one is incredible and the second one just never holds up to it.
Totally.
Or the third one, or the fourth one, or the fifth one, if we're going to talk about Resident Evil next.
Yeah, I've never played Resident Evil. I've seen a couple playthroughs, but don't really remember. I love the films. I think they're incredible pieces of cinema. I think they're so good. But it has nothing to do with the games.
No, they're completely different. Yeah. I've only played... Well, no, I have not played any of them. I've watched 7, the most recent one. I only really watch funny Let's Plays of that because that game scares the living shit out of me.
Yeah.
But I have seen my sister Elodie play they recently released some remastered versions of the older Resident Evils.
Yeah.
Someone is singing outside. Anyway, and they're really interesting, partially because, and I observed this while playing these with her, they're built on the old they're built on the old sort of shooter game mechanics, so they're incredibly hard to play now. Like, we take for granted how much easier games have gotten to sort of, not easier to play, but more accessible to learn.
I've genuinely never thought about that.
Yeah, it's really interesting. You don't walk very fast, the enemies are extremely hard to kill, it's extremely hard to aim.
Wow. But I just thought I was bad at games.
Oh no. Oh no.
Oh no, it's both.
But Resident Evil 7 is interesting to me because they completely flipped everything on its head.
Okay.
And if you ignore sort of clues and hints in the ending, it could be in a completely different series and you really wouldn't know.
Oh, I like that.
So the first big thing it did is it's first person.
Right.
Which none of the other Resident Evils have been.
Yeah.
And it's there's been a few other Resident Evil set in one location, there's one in this big creepy mansion and whatnot, but this one's set in a house with a very scary family, and you're looking for your girlfriend, and you basically
this is the one that I've seen the playthrough for.
Yeah, so it's really gory, which is not something I enjoy, but it's also I don't know, it's really scary because you're running away from, and you can hear in the distance. The mother's the scariest to me. She's very scary, and she controls bees.
Whoa!
Yeah, I
did not get far enough into this Let's Play.
But there's a lot of moments in it that are really and this is another trope that's really popular right now. But there's a phone that'll ring, and it's someone giving you help.
I don't have time for that.
You don't have time for that.
That's probably the scariest thing.
Yeah,
in games
it's
to
very
me is
scary.
A phone ringing,
and you're wondering well, A, who can see me, but B, why are they helping me?
Which is interesting because I think that kind of goes back to the old Scream films. Oh. Or no, Halloween. Is it Scream or Halloween?
Well, I don't watch horror movies.
It's Scream.
So
it's
I think
Scream.
That Scream is a parody of horror movies.
It is, but I don't know if that one copied the idea of the phone ringing or if it invented it.
Yeah.
Because it copied a lot of things, obviously, on purpose.
Oh, yeah. Satire,
yeah. Yeah. But that's interesting because... we kind of saw that go away, and now it seems to be coming back.
Yeah, I mean, it comes back in a lot of different games.
Yeah, totally.
Like PT, for example, but we're going to get into that later. Yeah, but Resident Evil 7 is super interesting. It really amps it up on the freak-out level in terms of gore, which is not something I enjoy, but, you do kind of viscerally feel like you are... I think his name's Ethan. But
yeah, I think it is
you
Ethan.
are him. You're looking oh shit, my arm is getting sawed off right now.
Oh, and that's the one thing I remember about this game is that you can watch your body parts get
So in terms of horror games, it's not the kind of horror game I enjoy because it's a lot of it is built on gore.
It's too immersive.
It's a little too immersive. But
don't they have that game also in VR?
Oh, I hope the fuck not they do. Anyway.
Crazy.
But it does a really, really great job in first person for a series that has never tried first person. Mm-hmm. And it's an interesting play on all the rest of the ideas of the series. And I think it's genuinely... Well, I don't find the other Resident Evil scary, first of all, because they feel more like action games to me. But in this one, there's like moments where you're genuinely helpless. And I think that's part of what makes a horror game really effective.
That is interesting. I'm trying to look up. Yeah, it's VR. You can play it in VR.
No, thank you. I will not be playing in VR.
That's the playthrough that I watched, and the guy playing was like really upset. He like actually couldn't keep playing the game.
Yeah, that's really scary.
Yeah, it's really spooky. But the next one we're gonna talk about is Silent Hill and PT. Mm-hmm. I'm trying to remember if I've played a Silent Hill game. I don't think that I have. I've never owned one for sure.
Yeah, neither have I. Actually, my introduction
yeah.
to... Well, technically my introduction to Silent Hill was watching this YouTube series called Boundary Break, which is super interesting if you make games or enjoy games.
Yeah.
Yeah, and through the movie, which I've only seen bits and pieces of, and it's supposedly, like a good video game adaptation.
I don't know. Well, there's 2 Silent Hill movies.
Okay.
And the one that came out first is good, and the one that came out second is very bad.
Okay.
Apparently.
Well, PT
I've only seen the first one.
Oh.
I thought it was very good. So.
Well, PT is like the game equivalent of an urban legend, whereas
Whoa, yeah.
It's super interesting. It was released... first of all, it's called PT, which means playable teaser or trailer. But it didn't advertise that. It just said PT. It had no names attached to it initially. And basically, the game itself, I believe it was just released on the PlayStation Network. I don't think you can't buy physical copies of it.
No, you could never buy physical copies.
So you could just download it, and it's a game in which, and we discussed this, I think, last episode, or maybe the first one.
Yeah, it was the last one.
Last episode. All you do in it, you're a man, and you wake up in a basement, and there's a paper bag that's talking to you.
Forgot about that.
And, sorry, I was getting a phone call. There's a paper bag that talks to you, and it says some really spooky stuff that I love. And then you basically get up, and you leave the basement. And you're in this suburban house, and everything kind of seems off. It's nighttime. There's writing on the wall that's really spooky, but it like standard fare kind of horror game stuff.
Yeah.
And then you hear a radio go off, and it's saying some very spooky stuff. Mm-hmm. It starts telling you about this murder that happened, but it's really inconsistent. And then you kind of keep walking through, and you go down a hallway, and there's another door, and then you end up in the same place. And this is how the game... Limbo. Yeah, this game continues like this. It's these cycles of these hallways, and they get increasing... Same hallway, and it gets increasingly more surreal and bizarre as it goes.
Yeah.
And there's this ghost named Lisa who's following you, and you basically have to stitch together what happened using all of the environmental clues. It does not tell you anything. It doesn't hold your hand at all. But the spookiest thing about PT... and I could talk forever about this game.
Yeah, you should.
I should. The spookiest thing about it is that it was a playable teaser for Silent Hills, and then that game got canceled because the world wasn't ready for a Hideo Kojima Guillermo del Toro collaboration, I guess. So the game with Silent Hills gets canceled, and PT exists for a while, and then it's gone forever. You can't download it anymore. You can't access it unless you have a PlayStation with it downloaded.
Yeah.
And it didn't reveal any of this until the very end of the game, where you get out of the house, and it's revealed that you're Norman Reedus, and you see Silent Hills by Hideo Kojima and Guillermo del Toro, and you're excited, then you have your heart broken.
Yeah. Yeah, people were so excited for this game. It's probably one of the most hyped up games I've ever seen.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But what makes PT great, in my opinion, and I'm sure you can chime in, because I mean, at this point, if you watch a lot of video game stuff and play a lot of video games and you haven't seen anything about PT, I don't know where you've been. But
that's kind of true.
But the thing about PT is most effective is, one, sound design. It has incredible sound design.
Yeah, it does.
2, everything is super well paced, and 3,
Yes.
it never gets you too fast or too much, if that makes sense.
Yeah.
It gets you in little increments.
Well, I think another thing too is like one of the scariest things is repetition.
Oh yeah.
And
you definitely feel trapped.
Yeah, because you feel trapped. And it's very claustrophobic. And not because like it's dark, but just because you have to be like going through the same hallway for the whole game, and you don't like it's very interesting because it's a very scary game, obviously, but it kind of eliminates all player agency because you just can't like, I don't know, like you don't. It's not a game where you make choices, especially since it's, it's a playable teaser, right? Like, it's not supposed to be a full-fledged game.
You make sort of minuscule choices.
Like, you can choose to ignore things.
Yeah, there's definitely clues and things. There's, like, one part where you have to piece together a photograph to get out. Like, there's little things, but you're stuck in this hallway. So you're right. You're kind of, there's no escape. There's no choice. You can't leave to a different room.
Exactly. Until the game tells you can leave. Which is, this game is terrifying.
Yeah, this game is very, very scary. Just to reiterate, this is our horror game podcast. I mean, like, there's also something about PT that it does really well is that it digs up these sort of, like, I don't want to say pretty old, like, pop culture references and very carefully hides them in order to, and they all have, like, sort of double meaning.
Right.
One of my favorite ones is they have, let's pray that I remember what this thing is called, but there's some radio stations called number stations that I think originated in World War II, if I'm correct, but they're basically just, it's usually like a child or a woman repeating numbers over and over again.
Oh, yeah, that's so interesting.
And it's very spooky, and it was used for code purposes, but also for, like, just making sure your signals on all sorts of stuff, and they're still out there. And in PT, like, there's the radio plays a huge role in the game.
Yeah.
At one point, it's just on one of those stations, and at another point, it's, like, a Swedish broadcast, I think. It plays multiple different broadcasts about murders involving, like, family homes.
That's so scary.
And then it also plays an original broadcast, or a spoof of, or something, of War of the Worlds.
Whoa.
And then it also keeps repeating this. A lot of things in the game repeat this string of numbers that actually crop up in, like, Metal Gear Solid and all this other stuff. Okay, the baby in PT is just the Eraserhead baby who talks.
He's nasty.
Yeah.
That's all I have to say about that. He's a little icky.
All I'm saying
like a nasty raisin.
Eraserhead baby.
I've never seen Eraserhead.
There's a baby in Eraserhead.
Yeah, I know that.
So basically, I don't know. I feel like it really uses these sort of subtle references to things to kind of just make you feel like you're missing something, which I think is scary.
Yeah,
I don't know. There's something about, like, oh, I didn't get something and it's going to be important. That's really spooky to me.
Yeah, totally. No, PT is really scary. Well, I'm interested in the fact that, like, you brought up that one of the scariest things about this game is that you can no longer play it.
Yeah.
And it wasn't like, I mean, it wasn't even out for a year.
No, it was
out for probably a couple months.
Yeah, I don't know the exact time frame, but it was not, like, not everybody had it.
No. But it is interesting because I'm thinking about this in context to, like, what if a game like this came out, in the 90s or something like that, which it wouldn't. Like, a game like this probably would not have come out in the 90s. But the thing is, like, we have evidence of this game existing because so many people do Let's Plays nowadays and, like, like, have documentation of them, like, playing it. So there's tons of Let's Plays you can find about PT online. But, like, it's almost a more terrifying fact that, like, if this came out in the 90s or something, we would have no evidence that it ever existed.
Absolutely. And that's why I think it's like the urban legend of gaming.
Yeah.
Because, like, that's part of the allure of it.
Yeah,
like,
it really is.
Like, this game literally is impossible to find. It exists specifically on certain consoles. It's kind of like a ghost story.
Yeah.
Totally. There's something, and before we move on from PT, because, like, again, I could talk about it forever, and I know, Mandy, you're also very interested in it.
Yeah, I'm into it.
And this doesn't come up that often, I think, in conversation, but it has impeccable set design.
Yeah.
impeccable asset placement. Down to like there's this cabinet in the hallway where there's some photographs. And so many subtle things will change with each iteration.
Yeah. Every time you walk through the hallway, something small is different. Mm-hmm. Even if you don't think anything's different, like there's always something.
Yeah, like one cycle it's raining outside, and one cycle like the phone is off the hook, or the pictures are upside down, or the pictures are just no longer there, or like...
I think in one iteration, everything's the same except there's something hanging from the ceiling.
Yeah, there's a there's a refrigerator hanging from the ceiling, and there's blood coming from it, and a child's crying. So it is not afraid to use those classic tropes.
Yeah.
But one of the best scenes in PT is when you go into the bathroom, because you see a hole.
I would argue worst.
Okay, one of the worst. You see a hole, and so you go into the bathroom, and through that hole, you can hear a murder happening. And it's very scary, but then you look through that hole, and you do not want to look through that hole. You're just telling you, like, don't look through it.
Right.
You have to look through it. And that's, I don't know, there's something so, it's completely unreal and surreal and strange, but you get so lost in it.
Yeah. No, totally. Yeah. And I'm thinking, too, about, the, like, technical aspect of it, like the graphics. Like, something like that doesn't have to be hyper-realistic to feel realistic, because it's already a surreal world.
Yeah, and
the graphics... I think is really smart.
The graphics are great.
Yeah,
they are.
But they will get outdated in a couple of years.
And I think that's totally fine.
Yeah, I mean, that's a thing. For that, I don't think it matters.
Mm-hmm.
It doesn't claim to be, like a realistic, like, simulation of anything.
Yeah.
But it, like, it feels realistic because of the setting. But the graphics don't hinder it at all.
No. And again, a last topic. We keep saying this is going to be the last one, but one of probably the biggest trope in, I'd say, modern horror is the haunted house.
Yeah.
And PT is just at its base is a haunted house story.
That's
and
true.
That's what makes it unsettling, because you're in a house that your mind is telling you this is normal.
Yeah.
This is a normal suburban hallway. There's
That's
pictures
true.
of nice people on the wall.
That's a good point.
This house may look like my house, and it's completely wrong.
Yeah. No, totally. And that's kind of the core concept of, I think, all Silent Hill games, is that it just takes place in a suburban area.
Yeah.
Part of the reason why Silent Hill's always been so scary to me is because, you go to places like a school, and it seems normal, and you open a locker, and then there's just a goopy boy inside, and you're like, oh, that's disgusting. It's like...
There is a secret ending in one of the Silent Hills in which it's all being controlled by a dog. Spoiler alert! God!
I love that. Well, I mean, if it's a secret ending, it's not really a spoiler.
Yeah. Again, I've never played the original Silent Hills. I've seen a lot of things about them, but I've never watched a full walkthrough. But yeah, I think taking a mundane thing and sort of setting it in the excuse me, I got distracted. And then placing you in it in a scary capacity, like something is happening inside this normal place that is affecting you, is one of the best ways to make something scary.
I think so too. Like, there's nothing like more boring than like you being scared in a place that you're supposed to be scared.
Yeah, like an asylum.
Yeah.
I have a problem with that trope for a lot of reasons.
Right, no, sure, but it's also like whatever, like it's boring.
Yeah, one of the reasons the Outlast games don't scare me, they just gross me out.
Yeah.
It's just like, you're a dumbass reporter going into some nasty, like, of course, what are you expecting? Like,
I feel that if you don't have empathy for the character that you're playing as, you're not going to be as scared. Because you are not trying to, like, save or protect the player. You just don't care. And, like, so something like that, it's like, I don't care about a reporter, like, consciously going into somewhere where they're probably going to get killed. Like, I don't care about that kind of person,
I think that's one of the downfalls of some of the Resident Evil games, is because you're always kind of saddled with a side character you have to protect. And a lot of times you don't care about them.
That's so annoying.
Yeah, also, like, I'm sorry... I think his name is Leon, yes, in Resident Evil. They were really on that whole, like, Leonardo DiCaprio, it's the 90s vibe, because he just looks like him, and the name is very similar. So, like, I'm on to you.
That's funny.
Okay, I'm on to you.
That's funny.
Yeah.
But the next thing that I kind of wanted to talk about was bad horror games. I can only think of one because I just don't play a lot of horror games.
We differ on this topic, by the way, so this should be really exciting.
Yeah, so I think that Slender Man is objectively not a good horror game. Because it relies too much on jump scares. It's ugly. And also, like, I don't know, it's just not interesting to me. Like, I don't know. Well, how do you don't agree with me?
No, I don't. Well, I think I have a weird perspective on it because when I was in middle school, me and my friend group and I, because I know my mom is listening and will correct my grammar, were obsessed with the myth of Slenderman.
Oh, okay.
And we played this game a lot.
I mean, I was too. I used to watch Marble Hornets, which is why the game is such a disgrace.
See, I didn't watch that because I didn't know what the fucking internet was.
You would not like it.
But my point is, like, we were so into this whole idea, like, oh, he's in the woods. If you turn around, he's always there.
Yeah.
And we loved, like, the writing of the notes and all of this. And the first games I really had connections with and that I was playing were all Valve games. But the games I played before that were all games that were made, like, when I was pretty much too young to play them. So I was kind of used to shitty graphics. Like, I wasn't up on the times or anything.
That was more or less a joke. He's ugly, but, like, that's not what makes it a bad horror game.
I mean, he is ugly, but okay.
Very
But
bad.
yeah, but for me, the gameplay is not exciting.
No.
You
walk around.
It's basically serves as a vessel for you to get scared.
Sure. That's why I don't like it. Yeah.
Yeah.
But, like, I mean, I also have a very, like, nostalgic, like, connection to Slenderman because I used to play it with my friends as well.
Yeah, me
and,
too.
Like, we would, like, turn out the lights and be like, oh my god, do you have Slenderman? Oh, let's play it.
That's what you did.
You know?
2010.
Exactly, right? But, I mean, when I think about it, like, it's kind of hard for me sometimes to gauge what is, like, good horror and bad horror because I get scared of everything regardless of, like,
oh, yeah, me too.
the tropes or whatever. But, like, thinking about it, I just don't think that there's anything particularly, like, scary outside of the fact that he jumps in front of you. And I think that that's just, like, at its core, like, not creative. And I think, like, horror games thrive the best when they're, like, there's some interesting mechanic or there's, like, something creative about it. Like,
or the sound design or the setting or the story.
Yeah, and I just think that Slenderman, like, lacks all those things. Like, you know, the sound is, like, not terrible. And, like, the visuals are not terrible. But it's all those, like, little things that, like, make a game really great if you have strengths in them, which is why I don't really think that it's, like, super successful as, like, horror.
Yeah, I think
another thing, though, is I don't think it's trying to be.
So
that's fine.
I think the point of Slenderman is to play it enough that you know how to beat it.
Yeah.
Because there's a strategy to it, and there's something really exciting about being like, okay, I died in this, like, tunnel bathroom.
Yes.
You remember the tunnel bathroom?
Yeah.
Like, I died in here last time, so now I have to sidle sideways so I never turn around. There's something kind of fun and puzzle-like about it.
Yes, totally.
But for someone like me, who I play mostly, like, single-player story-based games, this is, I guess, technically a single-player story-based game.
Yeah, I mean, for sure.
But
the story is interesting.
Yeah, but
for sure.
Do you get any of the story through the game, though? Through the notes, a little bit.
I mean, yeah, like enough. I would say enough.
Yeah,
you get.
But it's not effective for a few different reasons.
Yeah.
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 And I think one of them is just that it's not engaging enough as a game.
Yeah, and I think that, I don't know, like, listen, I don't want to bring the movie into this, but I'm going to bring the movie into this.
I did not see the movie. I had no interest.
I was, like, so excited to see this movie because I knew it was going to be terrible, but I did not think it was going to be that bad, and it was, like, really bad. Like, I get scared of everything, and I was not scared during that movie. And there were jump scares. Still wasn't scared. I was, like, chilling. It was really bad.
Oh, dear.
But an interesting thing that I want to bring up, just because we're on the topic and I want this to be recorded somewhere in the universe, is that film has so much, like, far-right propaganda in it.
Oh, my
And
gosh.
I don't know why. Like, I don't know what about Slenderman is particularly, like, not progressive.
Well, I think that brings up, I think it's because there's pockets of the internet that were really into Slenderman
weird.
That are, like, 4chan-y.
So weird.
Yeah, so I think that makes total sense to me, actually.
It's so scary. Like, I remember being in the theater, and the final scene, like, you're in a girl's room, basically. This is the movie, by the way, I just want to clarify.
The game is not this complex.
No. You're in a girl's room, and to get, like, obviously she lives in her parents' house, and to get up to her room, you have to take a little stairway, but the door to her room is, like, at the bottom of the stairway, and then the stairway's in her room, right?
All good things happen at the bottom or top of a
I know,
long
it's, like,
stairway.
it's very good for, like, you know, the cinematography or whatever, but, like, you know, that's just how her room works, right? And I was the only one, like, out of the people who I went to see it with that noticed that on the right side of that, like, kind of mini stairway was, like, a Make America Great Again sign.
Holy shit.
It was so weird. It was so... Yeah. I noticed it. I was like, whoa. And that scared me so much more than, like, Slenderman. I don't know. It was so weird.
That's wild, and also, like...
It was very bizarre.
That's, like, for a different podcast, and that's crazy, and we should unpack that later. But
I know. Isn't that... Okay, yeah, but, like, I don't know. I feel like that also kind of makes a good point of, like, there are things scarier than, like, a creepy man in the woods.
Yeah, but I think the original thing what made Slenderman scary for me was the whole lore of it, like, seeing him in photographs, and, like, he was there. Sure. Whereas the Slenderman game is, like...
You're running away from this, like, tentacle monster.
And who are you, really? Why are you in this forest?
Yeah, there's no context, which I think is another thing.
It's cool. I think the way I would describe this game is, oh, that's cool.
Yeah.
Like, but it's not like I think about some horror games and I'm kind of blown away by how they use the medium and the genre to do something incredibly emotional and interesting.
Definitely.
And with Slenderman, I'm like, oh, that's cool.
Yeah. Well, I think that a key part of horror is empathy, as I kind of mentioned earlier.
Definitely.
Whether it be empathy towards your character, or, like, you know, like, it goes much deeper than just wanting to survive, I think. Yeah.
And I think, okay, the wanting to survive part is interesting because I didn't enjoy Five Nights at Freddy's at all. No. And I found it pretty boring, repetitive, and not that interesting.
That's another one, actually, I could have put under bad horror.
But I think the reason it's better horror is because you really want to survive. Because I don't know, it's like, it's your job. Your boss
you play as kind of like this, like overworked dude who has to work a night shift to get by. Like, there's context behind him, right?
Yeah.
And you want him to survive because, you know, like, he's, you know, working so hard. He has to take the night shift. Then all this creepy shit happens.
And then you wonder, like, dude, like, there's a Chuck E. Cheese's right down the street.
Yeah.
I don't know. There's, like, something...
I would actually love to talk about Five Nights at Freddy's. I, like, totally forgot.
Yeah, we can branch into that for a second because I don't... What's next on our agenda? I believe we have some time.
Oh, yeah, for sure. We're chilling. But essentially, okay, so I'm not going to talk about this forever, but I think that Five Nights at Freddy's at its core is not a scary game because it is purely based out of jump scares, but there's two very fascinating things about Five Nights at Freddy's to me. One of them is that there is so much skill involved in, like, beating the game on hard mode.
It's extremely hard.
It's extremely difficult. And, like,
it's hard on easy mode. I don't know about you. Yeah. I can't focus on... it just distracts the shit out of me.
But essentially, every, like, animatronic has a different level, right? So if you're on, you know, the first night, all their levels are really low. And then, you know, they slowly go up, and they have differing levels. They're not all at the same one either. But after you've beaten the whole game, you can change their levels however much you want, like, on your own. So there's this mode called 20-20-20 mode, basically, where you put them all on 20, which is the max. And it's, like, impossible to beat. Yeah. But, like, Let's Players will, like, especially Markiplier, like, for example, like, I don't really watch him, but he was, like, the first person to be, like, you know, actively, like, beat that. Like, you know, like, really try to, like,
Mandy just smacked the mic. I don't know if you heard that.
I'm too excited. You know, he was the first person to, like, try to do that. And so, you know, at that point, the game becomes less about horror and more about strategy, which I think is very interesting.
Yeah, I mean, that's the same with Slenderman, though.
Yeah, that's true.
And that's why I think these games, A, don't scare me, and B, don't interest me. Because if I'm going to be doing
I'm also just bad at video games. I don't have time for this.
Well, if I'm going to be doing something that involves a lot of planning and strategy, I want to be invested in the story, too. Like,
exactly.
Like, I'm thinking of Dragon Age Inquisition. I really like strategizing, like, who's going to be in my party and where am I going to put them and how am I going to order this, and same with, like, Dungeons & Dragons.
Yeah.
Because the story's interesting and I'm invested and I care about it.
Yeah.
Five Nights at Freddy's is just like, we get it. Animatronics are scary.
Yeah. Totally.
And that's not interesting to me.
On the surface. However, the second point that I was going to bring up is that when I was younger and this came out, I couldn't give two shits about the gameplay. I was so invested in the lore of Five Nights at Freddy's.
That's interesting.
Like, so invested because it's so interesting. Like, the little, like, tidbits that you read online of, like, someone picked up this thing from this game and that means this because, like, it has, like, this glitch that you can, like, figure out.
I mean, I think that's part of what made PT great.
Yeah.
Continue though.
But like, God, it's so interesting that like, I don't know, but I think one of Five Nights at Freddy's faults is that the kind of core lore that you can get out of it is all pretty much hidden.
Yeah, and I understand that sort of like as an exciting side note, but that seems pointless to me, especially since for some strange reason they market Five Nights at Freddy to children, which makes absolutely zero sense to me.
So weird. And it's not like it's gory.
No, it's
like,
not.
What child would want to
a lot
play
of them.
That?
A lot of child.
A lot of really like angry like 8-year-old
many
boys.
Child. Yeah.
Yeah. I would not have wanted to play that when I was a kid.
No.
But like, I don't know. There's something about the lore to me that was always so interesting, and I'm really curious if I were to go back now and kind of like look at it all again, if it would be as interesting to me, because I was obviously a lot younger, so I don't really know if it was genuinely very intriguing or if it was just, you know, part of like me being young.
Yeah, or like part of it being a zeitgeist of the time.
Yeah, for sure.
I think next we're going to talk about funny horror games,
oh my
and
God.
I think we have 2 to talk about right now. So I'm going to let maybe Mandy go first.
Sure. So the one that I'm most familiar with is Dead Rising.
Which I've also not played.
Yeah, which I haven't played it either. But,
Is that's not the one where you play like a weird dude, he gets dropped into a mall?
Yep, that's
the
one!
Okay, I know about this game.
Yes, okay, so Dead Rising is hilarious. So my favorite part about this game is watching Game Grumps play it specifically, because, like, Aaron's actually pretty okay at it, like, half the time. And the other half, he's terrible at it. And, I mean, you know, some parts are genuinely very, like, hard, but he just, like, the most important thing to Aaron when he's playing this game is, like, what he's wearing. And you can wear ridiculous things in this game. But, you know, the zombies are genuinely scary.
Yeah, isn't this game sort of, like, spoofing on really, like, cemented cliches in the zombie genre?
That's what it seems like.
Like the hordes, like the whole one man against 200 zombies, like
that's definitely what it seems like it's doing. And I don't know, like the fact that it takes place in a mall is hilarious.
I love that. I love that it's like could if you wanted to read it as like a critique on American culture.
Yeah. I mean, like the thing too is that like, I mean, what would stop zombies from going to a mall? There's a ton of people there. Hell yeah, they'd go to a mall.
Well, if you got trapped in a mall during a zombie outbreak, yeah, you're doomed pretty much. Yeah. We both hate zombies, by the way. Oh my God, we're both terrified of them.
Zombies are like my biggest fear because it could happen.
It's funny that both games we're going to talk about in the funny horror game involve zombies.
I think it's because it's a really easy trope to make fun of.
Yeah.
Because there's so much content for it.
Yeah.
But that game is just so funny, and you know the whole charm of the game is like wearing like ridiculous clothing, and like I think that at one point you can get like a Lego man head that you just wear.
Oh, I love that.
It's so
There's
funny.
nothing spookier than Lego man costumes.
Yes.
Also, shout out to our friend Roy.
No, okay, we're not talking about that. But
we love you, Roy.
So. Yeah, that game is just, it's really funny because you can also use, like, a really diverse range of, like, really silly weapons to kill them. But the main thing about this game is that it has multiple endings based on, like, how fast you accomplish certain tasks and who you save. So there's people that it, like, if I'm correct, it, like, operates on kind of, like, a time, like, thing, and you have a certain amount of time to like beat the game, and it's a long time, but you can only save people at certain times of like the day or whatever, and it'll go continuously, you know, while you're playing it. And the people, like, you don't want to save because they're all so slow and they all suck. So you're just, like, screaming at these people to, like, hurry up. Like, you're trying to save them. Like, you're trying to kill the zombies, around them. But they, like, just either stand there or do not run fast enough.
That's why I think it genuinely is a parody or a pretty clever satire of, like, horror movies.
It's so funny.
It basically is letting you do what you always want to do when you're watching a horror movie, which is just fucking yell at the person who's running too slowly.
Or leave them behind, because you can.
Yeah.
And the ending is also really ridiculous. The one ending I remember is like you get saved up front by a helicopter. Yeah, which I think is really funny.
I'm just going to say this at the front. All of our episodes are going to have, like, expect spoilers for these games.
Yeah.
We refrain from talking like in-depth spoilers about like the new games. Like we didn't spoil Deltarune, for example.
No, yeah.
So we
That's
won't do
I
that.
Haven't beat it yet.
But these games came out like years ago. So
also, no one's crying over
spoiling
Dead Rising getting spoiled.
Well, what I want to talk about in funny horror kind of fits into the genre, but Left 4 Dead and Left 4 Dead 2. So again, when I started playing video games for real, I'm not for real, but like more, when I was first sort of introduced to them as a interesting thing that I could actually get invested in, I played exclusively Valve games because they had Orange Box on Steam.
Yep.
And Left 4 Dead and Left 4 Dead 2 are really weird games because they're both...
I've never played them.
Yeah, they're both like party-based first-person shooters. So you're in a group and you have to pick who you want to be. And each game has this different group of survivors and they all have these different personalities. And they're extremely funny, and they're completely different people. So there's this whole online sort of like cult fan culture built around Left 4 Dead, in the same way that there is online cult fan culture built around like TF2 and Portal and Half-Life, because all Valve games kind of create that. But Left 4 Dead is genuinely scary, but it's also genuinely funny.
Yeah.
There's moments in it that the characters are really endearing in a lot of ways. And okay, a lot of the jokes don't age well, and I don't agree with them.
Sure, yeah.
But there's like, you don't feel like you're playing plain, boring, random protagonists.
Yeah, they have personalities.
You're playing interesting, funny, weird people.
That's good.
And I can still quote most of them, and they all have like their little like idiosyncrasies. Yeah. And like, it's like a class-based thing too. So like, well, I don't know, one of them's named Zoe. I can't remember all their names, but like, one person throws pipe bombs, one person's sort of like a berserker kind of warrior. So there's like, they play into the same tropes, but I don't know. They're kind of comfy games in a weird way.
That's funny.
They also have one of the scariest monsters in any game I've ever played.
Oh my god,
sound-wise.
Really? Sound-wise.
The witches.
Oh, yes. I'm
So,
into this. I'm going to look this up right now.
Oh, they're very scary. So basically, if you ever hear someone
from the
crying...
first one or the second one?
Both.
Okay.
If you ever hear someone crying distantly in Left 4 Dead, get out of there.
Oh my god.
Because there's this monster called a witch, and it's basically this woman who is crouching on the floor
not
crying.
Okay with this.
If you get too close to her, she'll spot you, and she'll basically run at you super fast, and it's almost impossible to escape her. And I think that's one of the first things in games that genuinely scared the crap out of me. Yeah, Mandy's looking at a picture right now.
This looks absolutely ridiculous.
Yeah,
I
don't know.
Little crop top.
But these games were really effective in the way they scared you,
hands.
because you really cared about the characters, and it's a pretty formulaic game, but the atmosphere was spot on, and the enemies were really scary, and different from other zombie games. And I think games like Last of Us, kind of in better and more expansive ways, took the idea of like, oh, these zombie characters can be interesting and different, and they just kind of ran with it.
That's fun.
Yeah, so, I mean, for me, that game was really funny, and that me and my friends would joke around and say the quotes, and there was all these Source Engine, Machinima, like, funny stuff to watch. Mm-hmm. But it was also just a really fun multiplayer first-person shooter, which is not a genre I like at all. So it was really enjoyable.
Yeah.
And yeah, I
think
I have fond memories of those games.
I think it's always successful when a game that you wouldn't typically play in a specific genre makes you love that game.
Yeah. Definitely.
Which I think is hard to do since, like...
Overwatch couldn't do it for me.
No, I don't like Overwatch.
I love the art style and the
take.
shorts and the lore, but I don't like playing it.
I don't like a single part of Overwatch.
Okay.
Moving on. So, I think the next thing that we're going to really delve into...
We can combine it with the last thing, too. In a lot of ways. We have 2 topics left to go, basically.
Oh, yeah. Well, we have 3. But... one of them is, the next one we're going to talk about is games that have horror elements. And we're probably going to, like, kind of not talk about any of these too long.
Yeah,
because, again, they're not horror games.
And the games themselves have segments that are horror.
Exactly.
But
the first few you have played and I have not.
Yes. So the first one I want to talk about, and this is a really good segue from the last thing I talked about, is Half-Life 2, Ravenholm. If you've played that game, just hearing that should freak you out. But basically, there's a part... Well, all of Half-Life 2 is horror game adjacent. It's a sci-fi game, essentially. But it's very scary. There's these things called head crabs that are basically make you a zombie. I think they're cute, but they're also evil.
Head crab.
They're very scary. They turn people into shambling zombie messes. And so the game is littered with these abandoned cities and towns, or dystopic authoritarian towns. And at one point you come across this town, and I believe her name is Alex. Your friend is basically, it's called Ravenholm. She's basically like, we don't go to Ravenholm. And that alone is pretty spooky. Like, we don't go there. But you do go there.
Yeah.
And there's a lot of signs that you shouldn't, like people literally writing, don't go there on the walls.
Sure.
And Ravenholm is basically this house. It's like a manor, I think.
Oh, sounds like a manor.
And it's just terrifying. It's dark. There's things that jump out at you. The suspense it builds by everyone telling you not to go there.
Yeah, that's kind of the key.
It's incredible. You have to escape. And I'm not going to go too into detail into it, partially because it's been a really long time since I've played Half-Life 2 with any sort of seriousness, but also because we want to move on.
Yeah.
But I think that's a good example of, like, you have this one really scary segment and it's super effective.
Yeah, no, totally. We've both played, well, I haven't played Alice Madness Returns, but I've definitely seen a playthrough of it and remember it pretty well.
Yeah, so I don't consider these, I did play this game. I don't consider this a horror game.
No, I don't either.
It pretty much, I consider it...
It's more eerie.
I think it's eerie, and I think it's more of...
It's more edgy, actually.
Oh, it's very edgy, but that does not mean it's not good. I think
I think it's a good game.
To me, it's more of like an independent, experimental sort of adventure game, and I think it does a lot of crazy, interesting things with, again, like game set design, for lack of a better term. There probably is a better term, which is sad, because we're game devs and should know that, but anyway. Like, the most vivid thing I remember Alice Madness Returns is A, the statue that's crying.
I don't remember.
She's big, she's crying. And then, B, the last segment of the game in which you're playing against the main boss, which is the doctor.
Yeah.
And you're in this dollhouse.
Oh,
and it's huge, and it's made of, like, some meat substance that you're not sure.
I'm not into that.
Yeah, it's very scary. This is a game that really uses sort of, like smack you in the face visual horror in interesting ways. Yeah. And then the doctor himself...
This game is like 90% environmental.
Oh, yeah. The doctor himself is this huge, like, puppet master. And they just did a really great job. It has almost this, like, Coraline feeling to it.
Yes,
where I
would say so.
I played it when I was... I don't know how old I was, but I was in probably, like, early high school, and I was like, this is kind of fun, and I was edgy at that time, too.
Yeah.
But if I played it now, I would generally be very terrified of it. In the same way that, like, Coraline was fun to read when I was 9, and now I watch the movie or read it now, and I'm like, oh, God, this is terrifying.
Yeah. It's like, I feel like it's less horror, just more, like, very unsettling.
Oh, super. It
and,
really
like,
plays
it's 100%
into that.
attributed to by, like, the visuals.
Yeah.
No, totally.
Okay, and then I'm going to lump the next two together because they're both Bethesda, well, some of Fallout is Obsidian too, but the Fallout games have some really great quests that are more horror aligned. My favorite quest in Fallout 3 is this vampire quest. You find a town that's basically built on a crumbling stretch of, like, elevated highway, which, first of all, is dope. Second of all, is just visually interesting. And you come across this town, and basically people have been going missing and getting attacked. And you figure out it's this clan of literal vampires.
Yes.
And they're not necessarily evil.
Right.
You can join them.
Well, of course.
But there's something about the idea that there's vampires in this wasteland that's already scary.
Yeah.
But also the trope, I don't know if this is a trope even, because some movies and games do this, but, like, you come across this town, it's pretty much empty, and they're like, can you help us? And there's something weird out there that's taking people in the town, is one of my biggest sort of, like, things that scare me in horror. So it really kind of scratched that itch for me.
Yeah.
In New Vegas, this is sort of more sleazy horror. Once you get to actual New Vegas, there's a casino that is... What is it called? It has a specific name, but everyone there is all black tie, like, they're wearing... It might be called, like, White Glove. God, this is my favorite game. It's sad that I can't remember. They all wear masks. It's all very fancy. And they're cannibals. Yeah. And you find that out by literally...
Why are cannibals always fancy?
I don't know.
I think it's to, like, contradict the, like, trope that they're, like, messy and eat people. 100%. I feel like that's what it is.
I mean, Hannibal Lecter is still nasty boy though.
That's true.
Doesn't matter if he's fancy. He's still a nasty boy. But anyway, yeah. So this quest it's kind of funny, but it's also deeply unsettling because people were coming to this casino and come in and out of it, including you, and never know. And you don't like did I eat? Like you don't know. Also in Fallout, you have the trait that you can eat people. So thanks for that one. Hate it. Don't like it. And in Fallout 4, which is a game I do not like, partially because I loved 3 in New Vegas so much, the monsters are just very scary, and there's points where you're in these misty, nasty, foggy bogs, and there's just something in there, and you can find aliens, and it just adds to the whole atmosphere. But I'm not going to talk about Fallout 4 because I don't like that game.
Well, I guess.
And the one thing I'm going to say about Oblivion is there's an expansion called Shivering Isles, which I'm not going to get into right now. But it's this amazing expansion, and in this expansion, at one point, you go to, you're crossing over. There's these 2 cities, and they're based on like mania and depression, which I don't know about that one. But anyway, you come across this small town where everybody in town has a double.
Oh my God! Yeah.
Everyone in town has a double.
Like D&D.
It's like D&D.
I did not play that one, but you did.
I did. Everyone has a doppelganger, and you have to decide who you trust. And each person,
love that.
Oh, it's very scary, and each person wants you to kill the other one.
That's the whole thing about doppelgangers. Mm-hmm. They're always like, kill me, not me! And it's like...
It's deeply unsettling. It forces you to make...
I love that.
A very tricky moral decision, and you're genuinely not sure if you made the right one.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I love that. Well, the next one we're going to talk about is Majora's Mask and Twilight Princess.
Yeah.
And then when you told me about this, I was like, oh yeah, Majora's Mask villains are like so scary.
Yeah.
Okay, well not even villains though. Like everyone in the town is scary looking for some reason.
Yeah, I mean that game was sort of like...
It's very dark for a Zelda game, obviously.
But not only that, but it felt engineered to trick you into thinking it wasn't dark. Because there's like cute little plants and the and then I'm like, oh my God.
That's funny and also true. No, like, I mean, the final, like, iteration of, Skull Kid, aka Majora's Mask, is terrifying for a lot of reasons. But the scariest part of that game for me was the guy with all the masks on his back when he turns around and looks at you and his face looks terrifying.
Oh, no. That game is full of just scary bits.
It's so creepy, yeah. I don't really like Majora's Mask as a game, but it's definitely really spooky.
Yeah. We cannot stop talking about Majora's Mask without addressing the scariest part of Majora's Mask.
The moon.
Which is the moon.
She's beautiful.
She's terrifying.
She's objectively very bad.
Yeah.
And she gets closer and closer.
Yeah, Majora's Mask is timed, which is also something that freaks... Okay,
that's true.
We should have a whole episode about Zelda games. But
yeah, we should, for sure.
The fact that the moon is getting slowly closer to you and looks
like... Well, that goes back to the whole, like, looming threat.
Looming threat. And it's very scary, and you can't stop it.
No.
Unless
you go back
and it's very scary, and everyone should go look it up right now. Because it's very scary.
You've all seen it.
If
you are listening to this, you've seen the moon from Majora's Mask. It's very bad.
And then all I want to say about Twilight Princess is I think it's the darkest. Oh. Well, I like it.
What was that reaction?
Because I thought you had.
No, I've barely played any Zelda games, actually.
Oh, okay.
Fun little fact. I'm a poser.
Oh my gosh. Well,
I'm a game poser.
That's fine. But anyway, Twilight Princess is the most...
It's probably... Yeah, I've heard it's the
darkest.
Most dark, yeah. Also one with Midna, right?
It's Midna, who's awesome, but you... basically are a werewolf in it.
Yes,
which
I did
is
know that.
So great. Let me just tell you.
Oh my God.
But
yeah, no, I was never interested in that one.
There's just something overarching and negative about it, and I personally really love that game. Yeah. And when I cosplay Link, I cosplay as not Wolf Link, but Twilight Princess Link. I love the way the world looks, but also it's scary because it's like this creeping darkness that just takes people.
Yeah.
And the final boss, the final part, at one point Zelda herself gets possessed, and she's terrifying. She's got glowing eyes. She's got all these like electric lines running through her.
Oh my God.
And I just think thematically it's a game that really plays with like something terrible is happening in this entire world, and you're the only person who can stop it.
Yeah.
So I think it's the scariest Zelda game to me. It has way less of the sort of charm and quirkiness of the other ones.
You're definitely not the first person to tell me that.
Yeah, and I think that's why a lot of people didn't like it.
Yeah, I think so too. People do not like Zelda games that are different than like you just walking around a bunch of caves. At first. Retrospect, because everyone hated Wind Waker when it came out.
Wind Waker is beautiful.
But now it's one of the most beloved Zelda games.
It's probably my favorite Zelda game.
Yeah.
Wind Waker.
Yeah, totally. Yeah.
Let's move on to the next section.
Oh my god, okay, so this next section is all me.
By the way, you guys are getting treated to a little extra long session today.
We always go an hour and a half. But, okay, so I could not possibly, like, talk about horror without mentioning Doki Doki Literature Club, which I kind of want to lump into the category of it's not explicitly horror when you play it. And the scariest part about this game, which if you know about it, you know exactly what I'm talking about, is that it doesn't advertise itself as a horror game, but because of the kind of like cultural phenomenon that it had when it first came out, everyone knows that it is.
Mm-hmm. And so it's kind of reading about it.
Because you're kind of, when you're playing it, you're just waiting for something to happen.
Mm-hmm. Who was the first person to play it was like, oh shit.
Yeah, I was gonna mention that because I really want to know. Like, I want to know the first person who played this, not knowing it was a horror game, and then, like, dying.
Because I remember reading, like, 2 days after it came out, reading an article about it on Polygon.
Yeah.
Which is my go-to kind of game news source. And I was like, oh, I'm never playing that game.
No.
It's not in the genre I like anyway. But...
It's not ridiculous. Well, okay, here's the thing. Like, there's some things about it that I don't love. Like, it kind of makes, like, a spectacle and, like, a shock factor thing about suicide, which I don't appreciate.
Yeah, I dislike that in pretty much any form of media.
No,
it's disgusting.
Me too.
Yeah. Which is partially... I have some issues with parts of Alice Madness Returns for similar reasons, but continue talking.
But, like, it's, like, you can't deny that it's, like, and actually that part specifically, the part that I'm thinking about, the main example of that, is not the scariest part, which is why I can kind of, like, gloss over it and appreciate the other aspects of it, instead. But, like... Yeah, you don't go into it thinking it's a horror game, or like, well, you do, like, for the most part, but you don't go into it, like, as a horror game.
Yeah.
Like, and it's, you know, I didn't want any spoilers about it, because it's a free game, right? It's a free game, so I was like, I'll play it, and I didn't expect it to be as scary as it was, actually, and I'm actually gonna spoil this game just for the sake of, like...
analyzing it. Well, just to clarify, it packages itself as a different genre, right? It packages itself as a dating sim,
which I think is perfect.
My chair is very squeaky, by the way, so I'm sorry if you can hear that.
But I think the funniest and, like, almost scariest part of the game is the title. Like, Doki Doki Literature Club. Like, Doki Doki means, like, cute, right? And, like, Literature Club. Like, okay, it's like, oh, I'm playing a little, like, dating sim about these girls and, like, this, like, writing club,
right?
Oh,
see, I watch a lot of historical drama, so I immediately think that's, like, a BBC Masterpiece Mystery.
Oh, my God.
You know?
No, and, like... So, you know, it's like that whole thing of, like, I'm dating, like, all these, like, innocent, like, cute little girls. Like, that's so, like, whatever, you know? That's, like, kind of
charming, little, cute.
It's like stereotypical, like, dating sim, right? Especially, like, Japanese dating sim. And, like, you just go into it and you're like, holy shit. But I am going to spoil it because it, like, is essential to, like, me explaining what's so scary about it. So if you don't want spoilers, you can dip for this little section. But... essentially, like, one of the scariest things about it is that it takes a long time to get to the horror aspect. Like, probably an hour into the gameplay. And the gameplay isn't long. It's probably, like, 3 hours long. But, like, it takes about an hour, which is, like, you know, like, 1/3 of the game, right? Is, like, you, like, just playing the game as a dating sim. Which is wild. And then whoever, you know, you get closest to, well... The whole story is that you're this guy, and, like, you, like, I guess want a girlfriend all of a sudden for no reason. It's, like, again, like, that dating sim
that's
trope.
Just, like, going through puberty, right?
I guess that's true. Well, the thing is, I don't know what grade level they're in, either. Like, it's very, like... stereotypical in the fact that there's, like, almost no context needed for why you suddenly want to date these random girls.
Yeah.
So it's also kind of, like, a satire on, like, dating sims, right?
Definitely. I know the dating sims are extremly easy to parody.
Yes, completely. And there's so many parodies of it. But, so essentially you're, like, this guy and your, like, best friend lives next door and, whatever. And I'm not gonna like go into the part about your best friend because I don't really appreciate it that much. There's scarier aspects of it, but she dies basically. And then there's the other 3 girls. So you kind of just play the horror part with the other 3 girls. And you can choose to get closer to basically 2 of them. And whoever you get closer to dies first. Yeah, it's like so weird. And you know, there's
this sounds like a game designed to stress me out.
Yes, no, it's a very stressful game. Yeah. And the interesting thing about it too is that like slowly as you go into it, there's like little like uncanny valley things. Like maybe she'll say something that's like kind of creepy, but you're like, oh, that's just written poorly. You know what I mean?
Ooh, they really get you, huh?
No, they like it's so well thought out. Like so sometimes you know a character will say something along the lines of like, "I wish you could stay with me forever," and it's like, oh, that's a cute little dating sim thing. But then you realize that's essential to the plot. Like just that one line, it's like so scary, right? Because like the game is kind of a critique about like possession, and like putting yourself too much on one other person, and like loving someone so much.
Codependency.
Codependency, basically. And
that's interesting. I didn't know that.
Yeah. So so you end up with all the 3 of the girls dead, and then one of them is left named Monica, and she's just kind of like chilling. And there's this one of the scariest parts is that you have to pick who you get to hang out with, just like any other dating sim. But this has been a little creepy already at this point. And you, of course, like want to pick one of the other 2 girls because Monica purposefully doesn't talk to you very much in the game. But then your cursor slides towards Monica and you have no control over moving it.
Wait a minute, I love that.
It's really good. And it's really, really effective too.
I've been swearing a lot this episode. Sorry, I got distracted. Keep going.
Whatever. But yeah, your cursor just slowly goes towards Monica.
Oh my gosh.
And then, like, you know, you can try to click out of it, but then it'll like zoom in on her and she's like, oh my god, thanks for picking me! Like, really, really fast. And, like, it's so scary.
That's really scary.
Yeah, and so basically, you know, like, she, like, wants you all for herself, right? So the game kind of, like, ends with like you being like transported to like a different dimension, and Monica's just like sitting in front of you being like, we're gonna be together forever.
Oh my gosh, so she's the real villain
and
of it?
Yeah, she's the villain basically.
Holy crap.
And you know, she's talking and she's like I deleted all the other characters from this game, like you can't even find them in the files, which is alluding to you having to literally go into the files of the game in order to beat her. You have to delete her file from the actual, like, Steam account.
Okay, wait a minute.
In order to beat her, which is so clever to me.
That's incredibly good. That reminds me of, I can't remember which, I believe it's the Metal Gear Solid game, but there's a boss that can reads, like, your files on your console and basically, like, makes fun of you for stuff.
That's wild. But yeah, yeah, I don't know. I just think that, like, that moment, because I went into it, like, having no spoilers. I just knew that it was a horror game. And so when I got to that part, I was like, you know, it's one of those things where you need to go into the files to progress the game. So that kind of ruins the illusion a little bit for me. In a sense, I almost wish that she would just continue if you didn't figure it out quick enough. But she goes on, like, until you figure it out, like, you know, I just, like, went into the files of the game, like, wink, wink, nudge, nudge, you know. But then you literally delete her, and then you, like, go back into the game and open it again, and she's just like, what did you do? And, like, you know, like...
See, I love that. I love the idea that your real-life actions are having an effect on this character in the game.
Which is terrifying.
Because that almost projects her into your world.
Yes, exactly.
Which is very scary.
Exactly. And another thing, too, that I forgot to mention is that once... a couple things, but once all the other characters dead, and it's just Monica, there's this thing that you have to do, is that it'll, like, kick you out of the game sometimes, and then you have to open it again, and then only Monica's there on the home screen. Like, it used to be all 5 of them, like, chilling, having a good time, and once the first character dies, she's gone. And then once the other 2 characters die, they're gone from the main screen. So it's literally just Monica.
I'm getting goosebumps right now, and I'm never going to play this game.
No,
but
you
there's
shouldn't.
Something
you really
about
shouldn't.
the sort of, like, eerie, just very slow progression
so
of the
slow.
horror.
Yeah, no, it's so good. Which is why I really wanted to devote like a large portion talking about it, because I think it's really, really smart. And again, the tropes that it plays off of, I sometimes don't agree with for shock factor, but there are other aspects that I do really appreciate about it. Another thing that I noticed was that when you're in the like literature club and you're like talking about stuff, because you do literally like write literature in the game, like when it's really slow in the beginning, there's this really terrible piano track that plays, and it sounds like someone's just like made it up in 5 seconds. Like it's like dun 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 dun.
I like how you know it by heart.
Well, I listen to it a lot because it's really funny, but it's like a very simple piano track, and like at one point it sounds like someone's mashing the keys together.
My gosh.
But then that's another subtle thing that you then realize later that's actually kind of creepy. It's like almost Uncanny Valley. But I think one of the scariest part of this game for me is that at the very end, after you beat Monica and like quote unquote everyone gets like back, is that the credits play to that piano song, but Monica's singing. And it's the only time you hear voice acting.
I hate
in
that.
the whole game.
Wait, I really don't like that.
And the lyrics are basically like, I want to spend all my life with you. And it's like so scary.
Oh gosh, that's really scary.
But I love that game. I actually kind of want to play it again, but I can't.
I don't
it's
play it
so scary.
Just really briefly, this is to our Pokemon Go group chat. Please stop texting. It keeps buzzing, and it's very distracting for me, because I get distracted easily. I love all of you, but anyway, moving on.
Oh my god.
Sorry.
But yeah, that's Doki Doki Literature Club.
Damn. I know I'm never going to play it, but now I'm glad I was told about it, because that's really clever and extremely well executed.
No, it's so clever.
Yeah.
The last little thing that I want to say about it, too, is that there's almost no jump scares.
Great. That's fantastic, actually.
Great.
That's fantastic.
But it is more visual psychological horror.
Yeah.
So there is gore in the game, which is like, debatable.
Depending on who you are.
Debatable.
Yeah.
But the last topic that we're going to talk about is like kind of like a question. Like, is it horror? Like, I don't really know.
Yeah, what defines horror? What makes it horror?
Yeah. And the first one that I want to talk about is Don't Starve. Because, we've talked a little bit about how the basis for, like, a horror game is kind of, like, you want to survive, and you want the people you're playing as to survive. And Don't Starve is a survival game. I don't think I would argue that it's horror, but it's definitely very creepy.
Yeah.
And I think because of the art style and because of the, like, perspective that you're playing as, it doesn't feel like a horror game. But I think that there's definitely horror elements to it. The monsters in the game are very creepy, but they're more so, like, I don't know, amalgamations of, like, animals that already exist. So it's like, there'll be, like, a large spider, for example.
A spider, but it's very big.
A spider, but big. And, yeah, I don't know. Don't Starve is, like, it's really good, and it's creepy at times, but there's nothing about it that particularly makes me think, like, horror. I just thought I'd bring it up because I think that it's, like, an interesting kind of on the fence kind of thing.
I think a game that I would also sort of put into that genre is the BioShock games.
Yeah,
and again, I'm not going to go into
sure.
them because those are also games. Well, the first one is the game I actually really like.
Yeah.
But I don't consider it horror in the same way I don't consider, like, Alice Madness Returns horror.
Yeah.
Or, because it's like, to me, it's like pure sort of like really interesting sci-fi that takes a lot of like Lovecraft ideas and a lot of like turn of the century industrial age ideas and a lot of like 1950s and 60s space, all these kind of ideas.
Well, Don't Starve is very similar because you craft in that game and they're always like really complex machines. Like there's something about machinery.
BioShock to me is kind of a crafting game in a lot of ways.
Yeah.
But BioShock has some extremely scary moments and it has the setting of a horror game. But I don't think that does not a horror game make.
Yes.
You know what I mean?
Yeah, I would agree.
Yeah, playing it, I was never really scared. I was more like shocked at times or unsettled.
Yeah.
Which I think can be elements for a horror game, but in this case, I don't consider BioShock a horror game. I think it's a straight up action game with horror elements to it.
Yeah. Which is kind of how I feel about Don't Starve. I mean, like, again, the reason why I put it in this category is because it's interesting because it kind of has all the elements we've been talking about in terms of horror, but it just doesn't feel like it when you're playing it.
Yeah, well, I think you can have the ingredients and still not make the right recipe.
Yeah, no, totally.
You can put all the flour and eggs and stuff in, but you might not come out with a cake.
Completely.
That was a really weird thing to say, but you know what I mean.
No, for sure.
Yeah.
But then the last one that I wanted to talk about, which is both Inside and Limbo.
I have played Limbo. I have not played Inside, but Inside is incredibly fascinating to me.
I'm just going to state it right up front. I don't think Limbo's a horror game. I genuinely do think that Inside is a horror game.
I agree with you on that.
Yeah.
I think Limbo is scary at times. I don't think
Limbo's
it's a horror
little
game.
creepy, but it's more emotional than just the spider. That's
the sound it makes.
That's it. It's just the spider.
Horrifying.
The game is, in fact, in black and white and in a scary forest, but the only thing horror-related in that game is the spider.
You all know the spider.
It's so scary.
If you don't go look up the spider... Oh, God.
Ugh.
Actually, don't look up the spider.
No, don't.
You're not
it's
gonna
so
sleep.
scary. If you've seen a Black Widow, you've seen it. That's it.
But big.
That's it.
And you're
it's
a little...
big. And it
you're
stabs
tiny,
you through the chest.
And you are so small.
Limbo
and you have
was
no money, so you can understand the kind of stress you're under.
Limbo was my favorite game for like a good few years. I just think it's really beautiful.
It was pretty groundbreaking.
And the ending really moved me to tears, which doesn't take a lot to do, but still.
Yeah.
But, you know, again, it's creepy and, you know, you are trying to survive, but I think the fact that, again, the perspective, I think, is a big thing.
I mean, Minecraft is creepy and you're trying to survive. It's not a horror game.
That's true.
Yeah.
Yeah, no, for sure. But again, like, is that because of the style? Like, I don't know.
Yeah.
Like, I'm interested in those kinds of things that, you know, theoretically could be horror, but it just doesn't feel like it. And Limbo is definitely more of a puzzle game. It's kind of on the creepier side. Definitely doesn't feel like horror because there's no ever-looming threat.
No, yeah, exactly.
Really.
It never feels like there's some omniscient, like overbearing thing coming after you.
You know, as creepy as Limbo is, it definitely feels more hopeful than anything else.
Well, I think playing as a child can either amplify horror or make it seem more hopeful.
Yeah, definitely. But Inside is definitely a horror game, in my opinion. It's, like... It's so creepy. It's, you know, it's kind of like... It's that old trope of, like, you know, capitalism and, like, workhorses and, like, you know...
Which is a pretty good trope.
In reality. It's, like, fine. But, and, you know, that whole idea that, like, if you, like, buy into, like, the, like, whatever, like, like, working class, like, you will become a part of, like, the machine or whatever.
Yeah.
I sound like I'm talking nonsense right now.
Rage Against the Machine.
Rage Against the Machine.
Yeah.
But, and so, you know, you're this kind of, like, person, like, going through the world.
I think you're also a kid, right?
Yeah, I think you're a kid.
Also a kid.
That's why I said person, because I couldn't remember if you were a kid. But I'm pretty sure you're a kid. You're a small person. And, you know, you're kind of just going through these areas.
You have no money. Sorry, continue.
And you're, like, going through these, like, different areas, and seeing these people get kind of abducted in a weird way.
In a very scary way.
Yeah. And... Man, that game, I'm not going to spoil it because there's no point in spoiling it for this conversation.
Played it, so
no, I'm not going to spoil it. But, like, the ending is shocking in a really weird way. Not in the fact that, you know, something overly dramatic happens, but just you don't expect it. And also, it's just so subtle that it's, like, shocking, if that makes sense.
I think that core idea of, like, this little thing that can unsettle you so much, I think is what separates a scary game from a horror game.
Yeah, totally. That whole game is so unsettling.
Yeah, I mean, like, for me, the most effective horror, and I'm someone who really, I can read horror novels and I can play horror games, I can't watch horror movies. The most effective horror to me is when it's so underlying and so sort of insidious and below the surface that when you notice it, it really freaks you out because it's been there the whole time.
That's exactly how Inside is. You should really play it.
And that's also how PT is. And that's also how just any of these really effective horror games are.
Yeah.
Like, I don't know.
But yeah, I mean, I think that's a good place to end it. I mean, Inside, horror game, done. Bam.
In the book.
If you haven't played that game, you really should because it's a really fantastic game. and it's really moving in a weird way.
I think
both that and Limbo are incredible.
If we had to like pick from the games we've talked about, like the must-play horror games, I definitely think. I honestly think Limbo and Inside should both be on that list.
Yes, definitely.
Would you say? I mean, it sounded like you'd say Alien Isolation.
Yeah, Alien Isolation is definitely a good one to play if you like the Alien lore. If you don't really care about the Alien lore, you're probably not going to enjoy the game as much.
I think Resident Evil 7 is a really important game to play as well. But
totally.
Like, if you're, I forget the word for squeamish. If you're squeamish like me, don't play it. PT is a must.
PT is a must if you can.
If you can't, there's amazing silent walkthroughs and amazing Let's Plays. So you should pop in there.
That's true. That game, you don't lose a ton by watching a Let's Play, especially since you literally can't really play the game anymore.
Yeah.
It's fine if you don't play it and just watch it.
I think those are my main ones.
Yeah.
I was going to talk about Arkham Asylum a little bit, but I decided not to just because I feel like it would be kind of boring. I do really like that game, so maybe we can fit that into some other episode later.
Yeah,
but
totally.
But yeah, I think the strongest horror games are the ones that are scary on the surface level, but have an underlying theme that when you notice, it can really get you.
Yeah, definitely. Yeah. Cool.
Well, all right. Well, thanks for tuning in again.
Yeah, and we won't be here next week because we will be on Thanksgiving break.
Yes.
But catch us the week after that.
We'll have some new spicy video game stuff to talk about.
Yeah, totally.
Yeah, have fun playing the new Pokemon game.
Yeah, true. I will not be because, $60 is a lot for a Pokemon game that already exists.
I won't be playing it either because of $60, and also I don't own a Switch. But yeah, so I guess happy Thanksgiving if you celebrate it. If not, have a nice day off.
And play some video games.
Yeah, all right. Farewell.
Goodbye.